Good afternoon, all the viewers who are linked through DIP platform for this very important webinar on the new pneumococcal vaccine, the 10-valent vaccine Pneumosil from Serum Institute of India. And the format is that I will first present some data on this new vaccine for around 45-50 minutes. And after that, we will have question answer with two eminent panelists. One is Dr. Sham Kukreja and other Dr. Abesha. And I'm sure you know both of them. Dr. Sham Kukreja is a consultant pediatrician in Max Hospital in Delhi. He is also an ID specialist. He was, in fact, the president of the ID chapter of IAP in the year 2018, and he's also a great expert in the field of vaccines. And second panelist, Dr. Abesha, is a very good friend of mine from Ahmedabad. He is a professor of pediatrics. He also was the past president of the IAP ID chapter. He's currently the convener of the IAP SCVIP committee.
Not convener, member.
Member, okay, member of the you are the past convener, right?
No, I have never been. Only
Okay, I'm sure you will become convener and the chairperson too. All right, knowing your knowledge in the field of vaccine. So
Thanks.
Dr. Abesha has a great experience in infectious disease as well as in vaccine field, and I'm sure the IAP textbook of FAQ, the frequently asked question on vaccinology, is on the way out. In fact, the last proof has been read, and all of us have contributed, and it's a nice question answer format, and I'm sure all of you would like to read it. So with that preamble, I will start this session today. Let me first start with sharing my screen. Right, and I'm sure you can see my screen well, right? All right, so three great news have happened in the last 1 week or so. The first is, of course, that on 1st of January, Serum's Oxford AstraZeneca combined vaccine named Covishield in India, and which is the chimpanzee adenovirus vector-borne vaccine containing the spike protein as the antigen, was approved by the special expert committee and recommended to DCGI, who has now approved the vaccine today. And we also had the same great news yesterday of our own Covaxin, the wholesale killed vaccine by Bharat Biotech India Limited, the seed virus being given by NIV Pune and with co-funding from ICMR, also was recommended for emergency use by the expert committee, and DCGI has even licensed that vaccine to today for emergency use authorization. So now we have two vaccines which are licensed in India, and I'm sure all of you know the mock run of vaccination happened yesterday and day before yesterday in several parts of the country, and that one of these two vaccines will be available for use. The priority is, of course, to give the healthcare worker and other frontline workers the vaccine free of cost, and that's almost like 2.9 crore people. And then another 26, 27 crore people who are either above 50 or below 50 with serious comorbidity, who will also be given this vaccine. So it's good news that we have vaccines which are available, which are effective, and I'm sure in the next 6 months to 1 year time, probably we will be able to conquer this situation and come back to normal as it was before the corona outbreak in December 2019 onwards till today. The second great news was that our own Honorable Health Minister, Dr. Harshvardhan, is one amongst us. He actually dedicated this Pneumosil, the first Indian or locally made pneumococcal conjugate vaccine for global use. So I'm sure this vaccine, as you know, is WHO pre-qualified, so it's licensed for international use as well as now in India. And this vaccine will go into the public health in India because the tender process will start soon. And I'm sure this will be another shot in the arm, besides the existing two vaccines, to be used for saving lives of children. And the third news is that the standalone injectable polio vaccine, IPV, is now back in the private market after almost 2 years or so, again from Serum Institute of India, polio vac. And that would mean that we will be able to use standalone IPV wherever we have to use. Like, say, for example, people who have taken fractional dose in the public health, you may give one more dose, intramuscular full dose. People who haven't received a fractional dose at all, to give two doses 8 weeks apart, and then to use it along in the primary series. So far in private practice, we had no choice to use wholesale-based vaccine because we didn't have IPV standalone, and people who are not ready to go to public health, they had trouble. So now we will be able to use this vaccine along with wholesale-based vaccines, both for the primary and the booster series. And last but not the least, of course, for people like me who practice oncology, the cancer survivors and patients who have undergone stem cell transplants, they need revaccination with IPV. And again, we will be able to give them this vaccine. So with these three great news, let me start with the agenda for the current day, and that is to discuss the novel option for the conjugate pneumococcal vaccine, namely 10-valent PCV from serum. Now, sir, some nomenclature. When I say 10-valent PCV, it would mean the new vaccine Pneumosil from Serum Institute of India, because we also have Synflorix from GSK, which is also 10-valent. So I will call that as PCV 10. So 10-valent 10V PCV is Serum's vaccine and PCV 10 is GSK vaccine. And of course, Prevnar 13 from Pfizer remains as PCV 13 vaccine. Now, before I start the scientific deliberations, I would like to show the disclosure that I'm a consultant or advisor to most of the vaccine manufacturer who, and especially the top four who make either conjugate pneumococcal vaccine or a polysaccharide pneumococcal vaccine. So with that, these are the vaccines that are available so far in our, and we have used it in our day-to-day practice. It started with Prevnar 7, which was launched in 2000 in USA. At that time, Wyeth, which now is Pfizer, made this very US-centric vaccine, taking 7 serotype, which combined lead to more than 90% of the invasive pneumococcal disease in children below the age of 2 years or below the age of 5 years. They launched the vaccine, and the vaccine was so successful that the vaccine serotype just disappeared from the community. Besides direct benefit to the vaccinee, there was also a lot of indirect benefit by reducing the carriage in children who were vaccinated, who then did not transmit these serotypes to their contacts, adults and older children. So that for one vaccinee who was benefited, there were two more people in the community who never received the vaccine and yet did not develop invasive pneumococcal disease. Such strong was the indirect benefit or herd effect of this vaccine. Now, after launch of the vaccine, it was known that this vaccine also reduces all-cause community-acquired pneumonia, and that was a significant benefit. Besides, of course, reducing acute otitis media, carriage, and the herd effect that I told you. So, for the sheer effect on IPD and pneumonia, this vaccine had to be included in the national program in most of the parts of the world. So, as because pneumonia is the number one killer of children below the age of 5 years. But to make it more global vaccine, there are serotypes which are more prevalent in developing part of the world and other parts of the world, including in developed part like UK, Latin America. Those serotypes were missing from PCV 7. So those serotypes were then added to make it into a wider vaccine for a more meaningful coverage world over. So Pfizer made this 13-valent vaccine by adding type 1, type 5, 7F, and 3, which were important serotype in children in other parts of the world. Now, when the PCV 7 was being made, it was believed that 6B will cross-protect 6A. 6B did cross-protect against 6A in vaccine, but because the titers will be lower, it didn't have much impact on the carriage, and hence why there was no much effect on the herd effect. And 19F, of course, did not cross-protect 19A at all. In fact, the invasive pneumococcal disease incidence in the United States before any vaccination with PCV was around, say, 90 per 100,000. It fell to the last 15 to 20 per 100,000 within 2 or 3 years of launch of the PCV 7 because the vaccine serotype just disappeared. But if you look at the 19A incidence, it was just 2 per 100,000 before vaccination and became 8 per 100,000. So there was fourfold rise in 19A disease. So at the end of 2 to 3 years of the launch of Prevnar 7, the 19A was taking care of 8 out of 16 per 100,000 population of the remaining disease of burden of IPD. So almost 50% of the disease cause post PCV 7 was because of 19A. So 19A had to be included in the vaccine. And one more vaccine serotype was emerging by the time this was happening was a 6C. So we know that 6A cross protects against 6C, but 6B does not cross protect against 6C. So the 6A is required in the vaccine for its own direct benefit and for cross protection against 6C, and 19, of course, because 19F just did not have any impact on the 19A disease. Meantime, GSK was making its own pneumococcal conjugate vaccine using its very unique protein D as the carrier. And when they made this commercial vaccine, they had a mixture of three carrier protein besides protein D of NTHI, the tetanus toxoid, and the diphtheria toxoid. And because that time it was believed that 6A will be cross-protected by 6B and 19F will cross-protect 19A. They had not included 6A and 19A, but they had included the other three serotype, namely type 1, 5, and 7F in their vaccine to make it a global vaccine. Now, incidentally, there was a predecessor to the GSK's PCV10 was PCV11, which was tried as an experimental vaccine against otitis media in Czech Republic. And there it had also serotype 3. But in the study, when the vaccine was used, it did not have any impact on type 3. And in fact, type 3 disease increased in vaccine versus control. So in the final product, the type 3 was dropped and it became only PCV10. And now we have this new 10 variant PCV from Serum Institute of India, which is similar to Pfizer's PCV13, that it has 6A and 19A, unlike in the GSK's vaccine, which does not have 6A and 19A. And this 6A and 19A, we will little discuss in further because it's important serotype, uh, and they must be there in any meaningful conjugate pneumococcal vaccine. And it dropped type 4, type 18C, and of course type 3. Now, type 3 doesn't work in Prevnar 13, and I'll discuss that later and also in the question answer. So that was dropped. And because 4 and 18C were not important serotype globally, these two were dropped. So ultimately, it became the 10 valent vaccine, but different from GSK's 10 valent in the sense that it has 6A and 19A and doesn't have 4 and 18C, and different from Prevnar 13 that it has 6 and 19A but does not have 4, 18C, and type 3. Now, why 4 and 18C were dropped? Now, mind you, this is a locally made global vaccine. So it had to take the most relevant, prevalent serotype from global perspective. So if you look at type 4, say in Chile, Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, all Latin American countries, either 0 or 1%. And same for 18C, either 0 or 0.8%. So two together make around 1 to 2% of the serotype in the global market. And when it comes to India, it could be either 0 or 1% for type 4, and again, same 1 to 2% for type 18C. So together, they will be meaning around 2 to 3% of the vaccine serotype covered in the world. So these two serotypes were dropped to make it a more meaningful global vaccine. And as far as type 3 is concerned, there is only one match case control trial in USA. And mind you, all case control trials give you only the vaccine's effectiveness during that period when the study is going on and not a long-term effect as you see in cohort analysis. There it showed some decrease in type 3, 79% with the confidence intervals which were wide, 30 to 94.8%. Another indirect cohort study in Germany between 6 and 15 showed a point estimate of 74%, but a very wide confidence intervals of 2 to 93, almost touching 0 on the lower bar confidence interval. And there's a recent paper from Pfizer group, along with some scientists. They've done a meta-analysis of 6 studies, which shows a very similar to what you saw here in USA, around 75, 76% efficacy. Again, a very similar confidence intervals of 30 to 95. Now, that meta-analysis again has 4 studies which are case control trial. So again, case control trial are not the best way to see the long-term effect. But if you look at other cohort analysis, not one but 7 countries and different studies, right from 1999 to 2016 as the study period in adults, pediatric, below 5 years, and in countries like Denmark, Portugal, USA, UK, Sweden, Spain, etc., there has been no effect, nil impact, or in fact increase in the form of vaccine failure cases caused by type 3. So it is still a lot of scientists believe, and in fact WHO, as I'll show you later in my slide, that serotype 3 is eluding us from having any meaningful decrease or a sustained decrease in type 3 disease in any vaccine which has serotype 3. So with that, I come to the studies for the new 10-valent pneumococcal vaccine from Serum Institute of India named Pneumosil. As this happens, the first was phase 1 trial in India on some 34 adults. For usually it's for the immediate safety, and once it's found safe, is given a go ahead with phase 2 trial. So the phase 1-2 trial happened in Gambia, where it was given to adults, then to toddlers, and then to infants in a de-escalation of the age use, and it was compared for adults against Pneumovax 23 and in children against Prevnar 13. And again, small number of children, mainly for safety and immunogenicity. Now, this data use vaccine in 3+1 schedule. So the EPI schedule of 6, 10, 14 that we use, and a booster at 12 to 15 months, identical to what we use in our day-to-day practice. And this data is published. Of course, when you have a vaccine in phase 1 and 2, you're also trying to find a good vaccine and a good dose. So you still have a chance to improvise. And based on the success of phase 1, 2, there was phase 3 trial done in the Gambia, which compared it with Synflorix as the comparator vaccine using 3+1 schedule, but used this time 6, 10, 14 primary with an early booster at 9 months. And huge number of children, 2000 plus, were enrolled to look at a lot of things: safety, immune response, lot to lot consistency, non-interfere with the other co-administered EPI vaccine, etc. And this success of this phase 3 Gambian study led to international licensing and WHO pre-qualification. Now the manufacturer were probably thinking that they would get Indian license also based on this phase 3 trial. But as you know, the Drug Control General of India in India now insists on a local trial for all the vaccines which may have been licensed in other part of the world, like say typically the Oxford vaccine or the Pfizer vaccine or the Moderna vaccine for the COVID. They all have to undergo at least a small study in India before they are given license. So a phase 3 Indian licensing study was done, and this time they were asked to do study on 3+0 schedule using 6, 10, and 14. And as both Synflorix and Prevnar were available in India that time, they were asked to compare it with both these vaccines, unlike the phase 3 Gambian study, which was only with Synflorix. So this was 3+0 without a booster, comparing with both the vaccine. And meantime, a phase 2 study was done in India for the toddlers. By the time the data from these two phase 3 trial comes, what if a child comes naive for any pneumococcal conjugate vaccine without having any dose received in the first year, comes in the second year? What do? So this study compared in 12 to 15-month-old toddlers who had not received any PCV. Two doses were given 8 weeks apart, either of Prevnar 13 or of Pneumosil, and they were compared for safety and immunogenicity. So we have these three trials which are important from our day-to-day practice. One is the phase 3 trial in the Gambia, which led to international licensing. Other is the phase 3 trial in India, which led to Indian licensing, and the comparator being both the existing vaccine and a toddler vaccine for PCV naive children. So these are the three data that I'm going to show you essentially, as none of this data is actually published. All the data that I'll show you is data on file. And then there are ongoing ongoing studies. One is a Indian study of comparing 2+1 schedule, where you give 6, 14 and an early booster at 9 months. This is what we are using now in several states of country where Prevnar is being used as a part of the national program. Now this data is ongoing. Same way for international studies in other countries to use this 2+1 schedule of 6, 14 weeks and 9 months. Another study is going on, going in Gambia, again comparing with Prevnar 13 and Synflorix both, and both these are ongoing. Now, due to COVID situation, these studies have a little delayed, so the data is not available, but I'm sure the data will be available soon, and it will be interesting to see what the data is. Now, any new vaccine that comes in the world, it doesn't have to undergo an efficacy trial. It is licensed based on non-inferiority on IgG response as per the regulator, and there are cutoffs given. The cutoff that WHO says is the subject receiving more than 0.35 microgram per ml. So a new vaccine is then introduced, like say Prevnar 13 was introduced without any efficacy trial, but after the use of the vaccine, you would study the impact of that vaccine on the disease burden. So this vaccine also will undergo a such impact study, not on the IPD, but on nasopharyngeal carriage, because these are easy to do studies in developing country where they don't have meaningful built-in surveillance for invasive pneumococcal disease. So around 1,200 children between 2 to 12 months in Indonesia, India, and Vietnam, they would be studied for carriage before and after vaccination to see for the impact. And lastly, as happens with all the vaccine, you need to have surveillance for rare side effect, what you call phase 4 study, essentially for safety for a rare side effect. and that of course is built in any licensing process now in any new vaccine that comes to India. So in a sense, I'm going to discuss only the phase 3 Gambian data, phase 3 Indian data, and the toddler Indian data. Now, this is the SCVIP 2020 guidelines, which have been published online before the print medium, and it takes cognizance that the new vaccine is going to be launched, because this was before the vaccine was actually launched. So this they talked about the serotype and the coverage and the advantages, disadvantages, so on and so forth. And it said that you can use this vaccine in 3+1 schedule. So even when the vaccine is 3+0 license in India, is 3+1 in international arena, and as it has 3+1 data in Gambia, the IAP SCVIP has recommended to use this vaccine as 3+1 schedule. And mind you, the phase 1 to data, as I said, is published, but a vaccine is improvised after what was used in Gambia. So what is used in the phase 3 data that I'll show you is little improvised vaccine with a better immune response. So don't go or make your impressions based on this phase 1 to data. If you have read it, you should wait to see this data that I'm showing you, and then read the data independently whenever it's published in some of the reputed journals. So, and lastly, before I jump to the individual data set, let me explain you how an immune response is studied for a new vaccine for PCV. So there are two ways. One is looking at IgG response after vaccination. So either it may be post-primary, post-booster, etc. And you compare it with an existing vaccine, say it's Synflorix or Prevnar, and you show non-inferiority based on this 0.35, and you get your licensing. But that's as far as licensing is concerned. Now, not necessarily all these IgG is going to be functional, which means going to protect you against the disease. So how do you know whether this IgG is functional? That is by another way of looking at the immune response. That's what you call OPA, or opsonophagocytic assay. Here you take the serum of the children who have received vaccine, which have the antibody, IgG. You add the relevant serotype, live organism, and you add complement, and you see for opsonophagocytosis. And if that happens, which means the organism is killed in vitro, that is the test that this IgG is going to be also protective or functional. So you study both the ELISA and OPA. ELISA is mainly for regulator point of view, whereas OPA is very important from clinicians' point of view, who really want to know that these antibodies are going to work. Now, why am I stressing on this so much is because you can see here, this is the pivotal trial done in Germany and in USA when Prevnar 13 was to be licensed. And that time, Prevnar 7 was already the licensed vaccine. So Prevnar 13 compared it with Prevnar 7. So you can see the red is Prevnar 7 and the blue is Prevnar 13. So these 7 common serotype, you can see the immune response is very similar between the two vaccines, as is expected. And for the additional 6 serotype, you can see the blue bars are very tall, almost 90% plus for all 7 serotypes. Look at most of the serotype, Prevnar 7 hardly elicited any response. But if you look at 19A, 80% of subjects in the German cohort and almost 85% subject in this US cohort actually develop an IgG response to 19A. Now, if 19F in Prevnar 7 could lead to 80% to 85% IgG response against 19A, it should have also cross-protected against 19A. But as I told you before, in the USA, 19A disease went up. In fact, almost now taking care of 50% of the remaining disease burden after use of Prevnar 7. Now, why would this happen that there is so much massive IgG response, but it did not prevent? Is because if you look at the functionality of this antibody, then you can see this is German. Hardly any PCV7 vaccine is hardly any OPA titers compared to very tall titers with PCV13 subjects. Same for USA. Look at the difference between the PCV7 and PCV13, the OPA titers. So whenever you have vaccine, you look at IgG, of course, but you look whether those IgG are functional by looking at OPA titers. So all the data where I'll show you, I will stress more what's happening for the OPA between the new vaccine and the competitor vaccine, so as to understand how good or bad is the new vaccine compared to the existing vaccine. So with that preamble, I'll first start with the phase 3 Gambian study comparing new vaccine with Synflorix. So it was a double-blind randomized controlled trial in healthy infants in the Gambia. Almost 2000 plus subjects were enrolled. 500 each received either of the three lots of the new vaccine. So this was also a lot to lot consistency, besides non-inferiority on immune response, safety, tolerability, and non-interference with the concomitantly administered other childhood vaccination. I'll show you data for all these 5 endpoints. So 500 children received either of these three lots, and 750 subjects received the comparator vaccine Synflorix. And of the subjects enrolled, most of them completed the trial. So very robust trial that was conducted. First, looking at the safety. This is Pneumosil group, this is Synflorix group. So for most of the side effects, whether they are local or systemic, the side effect profile was similar between Pneumosil and Synflorix, except induration or swelling, which was around seen in 5% of say Pneumosil subjects and almost 10% in Synflorix subjects. So the local side effect in the form of swelling and induration was almost half with Pneumosil compared to Synflorix. For all other side effect, the profile was very much similar between the two vaccines. So on safety and tolerability, both the vaccines were good. Both of them had some mild to moderate side effect, except for swelling and induration, which was statistically significantly lesser in Pneumosil compared to Synflorix. All other side effect profile was the same between the two vaccines, and there were no serious adverse events related to either of these vaccines. So that was very, very reassuring. Now coming to the immunogenicity. So first we have to compare the three lots. Are they equal or no? If they are equal, then you can combine the data and then compare it with the comparator vaccine, which is Synflorix. So this is lot 1 data of the IgG response titers. This is lot 2 and this is lot 3. So you compare lot 1 versus lot 2. This is the first column here. Now you are comparing the ratio of lot 1 versus lot 2. So say lot 1 had 4.08 microgram per ml, lot 2 had 4.24 microgram per ml for type 1 serotype. So the ratio is 0.9. So very near to 1. So this, and this 0.9 could be as low as 0.88 or as high as 1.05. That's what you call 95% confidence intervals. Now this 95% confidence interval, the lower bound limit should not be below 0.5. If it is below 0.5, it means lot 1 is inferior to lot 2. And upper bound limit should not be more than 2. If it is more than 2, it means lot 2 is better than lot 1 again. So all these value for this each serotype, the lower limit should be above 0.5 and upper limit should be below 2. So you can see here for lot 1 to lot 2 comparison, this criteria is satisfied. Same way for lot 1 versus lot 3, you can see none of them are beyond the range of 0.5 to 2, and same for lot 2 to lot 3. So consistency between lot 1, lot 2, lot 3 was established. So now this data was combined to compare with the Synflorix. So this is now the data on immune response. So first IgG and then OPA, and this is post-primary because they were also post-booster. So first we will discuss post-primary, then we will discuss post-booster. So this is discussing post-primary seroconversion or sero response. The subject receiving more than 0.35 microgram per ml of seroconversion. So this is say 99.7 minus 99, so it's 0.7. So anything more than anything more than 0 is numerically favoring Pneumosil. But you also have to look at the confidence intervals. If the lower bound confidence interval is touching 0, then that 0.7% extra benefit is statistically not significant. Whereas if this is difference is 2.9 and the lower bound confidence interval is above 1, that means this is statistically significant. This is true for all the data that I'll show you for all the three trials that I'm going to show you. So you can see numerically for several serotype, almost 8 serotype, it was favoring Pneumosil, but statistically it was significant for 4 serotype, namely type 5, 23F, 6A, and 19A. So this is for seroconversion above 0.3 microgram post-primary IgG. Now, if you look at the ratios of the titers achieved, then again you can see for type 1, say in Pneumosil group, they achieved titer of 4.29, and in GSK's Synflorix, they achieved titer of 1.99. So 4.29 divided by 1.9 is 2.15. So anything more than 1 favors Pneumosil, anything less than 1 favors GSK. And again, look at the confidence interval. If this is above 0, then this is statistically significant. Suppose now you have here titers below 1, so it's favoring GSK vaccine. Here, if the upper confidence intervals are below 1, that means it is statistically significant. Now, this is true for all the data set that I'll show you how you interpret this superiority or inferiority. So you can see here again for 7 serotype, numerically the ratios were better with Pneumosil compared to Synflorix, and statistically significantly better for 6 serotype, namely type 1, type 5, type 7F, type 14, type 23F, and type 19. And it was better for Synflorix. For one, that is type 19F, as you can see, upper bound confidence intervals are below 0.8. So this was a true benefit for Synflorix. So 1 serotype was better with Synflorix, whereas 7 serotype were better with Pneumosil. Now look at the 6A and 19A, and I have shown this in green light. Now why this green color? Now you wonder, how can both 6A and 19A have 76.6% seroconversion for Synflorix, or for that matter, the ratio is 1.13 identical. Now these are not the true seroconversion or ratios for these two serotypes. The WHO has said that for the extra serotype, which are there in, say, Pneumosil, you can't take the actual value. You have to take the value of the serotype which is the least immune responsive in the comparative vaccine. So say for Synflorix, the lowest response seen was for 6B with 76.6%. So you put that value here, and the lowest ratio was 1.13 for 6B, so you put it here. And even when you compare this way, you can see on seroconversion for both the serotype, the Pneumosil was better, and for the ratios for 19A, the Pneumosil is better. But if you want to prove superiority, then you take the actual value. So you can see actually the seroconversion difference was massive, 73.3% for 6A and 54.7 for 19A. So of course it was statistically significantly superior, and same way for the GMC ratio, 8 times more for 6A and almost 6 times more for 19A. Again, statistically significantly better. Now, why am I stressing on the 6A 19A? Because as I say, 6B can cross protect 6A, and Synflorix also claims the 19B cross protect and 19A for Synflorix. For that, you see the ratio and the differences are so massive that you should actually have this serotype in the vaccine rather than to believe in cross protection. Now, you can see this in this actual real-time data. This is data between 2006 and 17 is what is known as Sireva paper, looking at the IPD in children in Latin America and Caribbean region before and after using PCV. So there are 4 countries: Brazil, Chile, Colombia, and Paraguay using Synflorix. So what happened to 19A in these countries before and after? You can see the serotype went up from 35 to 131 in Brazil, 44 to 118 in Chile, and like that in Colombia and Paraguay. So PCV is 10 using countries, Synflorix using country. As this vaccine doesn't have 19A, the 19A disease went out of control. Compare that with PCV 13, that is Prevnar 13 using country in the same paper, and looking at the 19A, you can see here the disease decreased from 59 to 19 here, from 79 to 45 here, and from 9 to 5 here. So except for this Dominican Republic, where anyway it was very less in number, for other 3 there was a massive decrease in 19A after use of PCV 13. And what is the real world time data on use of use of this vaccine on 19A disease burden? So this is looking at 3 countries using Prevnar 13, Israel, USA, and UK, and 3 countries using Synflorix, Chile, New Zealand, and Finland. And this is children below the age of 5 years who had received the vaccine. So this is the direct benefit of the vaccine. And you can see here, you introduce the 13 valent vaccine, and the disease just disappears for these 3 serotypes. You compare that with Chile, New Zealand, and Finland, the disease goes up for 19A, and New Zealand, after they switch from 10 to 13, the disease goes down. So this is the direct effect of 19A containing vaccine versus not a vaccine not containing 19A. Coming to the herd effect, again, same story. You use a 19A containing vaccine, that is Prevnar 13, and the disease disappear in people above the age of 5 years as a part of herd effect, whereas you use PCV10 Synflorix and the disease goes up in these countries. So it is important to have this serotype, both 6A and 19A, for direct protection and herd effect, in the vaccine. So that's as far as the IgG response. But as I said, OPA is even more important, and it's important to see what happens on OPA. So this is comparing OPA seroconversion more than 1:8, and anything more than one difference is numerically better for Pneumosil. And you can see here for 6 of the 10 serotype, it was numerically better for Pneumosil. So first of all, type 1 and type 6B with sulfurics had only 75% and 86% seroconversion below 90%, whereas for all the 10 serotype for Pneumosil, the seroconversion on OPA was more than 92%. So that's very reassuring. And you look at the data, 4 out of this 10 serotype, there was statistically significantly better seroconversion on OPA in Pneumosil compared to sulfurics. What about OPA ratio titers? So you can see here, as far as comparing the OPA ratio between Pneumosil and sulfurics, 2 serotype, 9V and 19F, were better with sulfurics, whereas 6 serotype were better for Pneumosil compared to sulfurics. And we'll come to these 2 serotype, which are better with sulfurics compared to Pneumosil on OPA titers post-primary, as to what happens to them post-booster. So before I go to the booster, just to recapitulate what happens to the post-primary OPA response, good OPA response seen with both the vaccine. For 2 serotype, type 1 and type 6B, seroconversion on OPA was less than 90% with sulfurics, whereas for Pneumosil, it was always more than 92% for all the 10 serotype. And there were several serotype where either the percentage responder above 1:8 ratio or the titer wise, for several serotype, the Pneumosil had a better response as compared to sulfurics, except 2 serotype 9V and 19F, which had a better ratios of OPA titers in sulfurics compared to Pneumosil. And we'll come to these 2 serotype 9V and 19F in the post-booster study. So this is looking at the post-booster response and IgG response. So this is again, you don't look at the IgG seroconversion, you only look at the ratios of the titers achieved. So again, you can see for at least 8 serotype, the titers on IgG ratios were more than 1. So they were numerically better for Pneumosil compared to sulfurics. So first of all, type 5 didn't boost for either Pneumosil or sulfuric. That is a surprising finding. See the titer 1.49 became 1.31. So no boosting in Pneumosil. 1.26 became even worse, 0.84 for sulfurics. And here the ratio was better with Pneumosil compared to sulfurics. And for the other serotype, you can see 9V and 19F, which I had shown you post-primary OPA, they were better with sulfurics. So post-booster IgG also, they are better in sulfuric group. But for remaining 8 serotype, they were statistically significantly better in Pneumosil compared to sulfurics. And coming to the OPA, which is more important, the ratios, you can see here that for 7 serotypes, the OPA ratios at the end of the booster were significantly better in Pneumosil compared to sulfurics. And there were 2 serotype 9V and 19F, which are doing not well with Pneumosil compared to sulfurics in the previous slide. Now you can see here the differences have disappeared. In fact, for 19F is numerically shared better with Pneumosil. So on OPA booster following the on the OPA response following booster, none of the serotype were better with sulfurics, and 7 serotype were better with Pneumosil compared to sulfurics. So that is the type of response seen in the Gambian study. Comparing the non-interference for the other childhood vaccination given along in both the group. So they had received the pentavalent vaccine with DPT, Hep B and Hib. They also received polio vaccine and rota vaccine. And you can see for each of these antigen, the difference in the between Pneumosil and sulfurics as far as immune response is concerned to this antigen is almost zero or not statistically significantly different. And same for the booster, where MR vaccine and yellow fever vaccine were given to the subjects. Again, between Pneumosil and sulfurics, there was no difference. So the new vaccine achieved non-interference, non-inferiority compared to sulfurics for the other childhood vaccination which are given along with primary or with the booster vaccine. So the conclusion of this Gambian phase 3 trial was that lot-to-lot consistency was achieved. Immunologically non-inferiority for all the 10 serotype was achieved, and in fact superiority was achieved for several serotype, both on IgG response and on OPA response, both following primary and following booster response. Non-interference with the other EPI vaccine given to children was achieved. Both vaccine safety and tolerability were achieved with lesser side effect like induration and swelling with Pneumosil compared to Synflorix, and boosting was seen except for type 5 for all the serotype, and post booster again the responses were better for several serotype compared to the Synflorix. And this study continued for one more year to see for persistence of the response. So this is looking at the persistence of the IgG response. So this is the seroconversion on IgG, numerically better for it is 8 out of 10 serotype. So except for 19F, which was better with Synflorix compared to Pneumosil, for remaining 7 serotype, it was statistically significantly better in Pneumosil compared to Synflorix. And comparing the IgG ratios, numerically better for 8 serotype out of 10 common serotype. So except for 9F, which was better with Synflorix, for 8 serotype, it was statistically significantly better with Pneumosil compared to Synflorix. And again, we'll come back to the 19F on OPA because this is just IgG, not necessarily functional antibody. So if you look at the persistence of the OPA, then again, for the OPA response, you can see numerically better for 4 out of the 10 common serotype. And on the OPA ratios, again, 4 out of the 10 serotype better with Pneumosil compared to Synflorix. And the two serotype 9V and 19F, which was sometime better with Synflorix in previous slides, as I showed you, has the differences disappeared on persistence. So on persistence study on OPA for several serotype, both for the conversion and the ratios, the Pneumosil seemed to be doing better than Synflorix. So this led to international licensing and WHO pre-qualification for use through UNICEF and Gavi funding in the country which take the Gavi support almost last year on 18 December 2019. That brings me to the phase 3 Indian study. This was a phase 3 trial done in 8 sites in India. Healthy infants received either Pneumosil, almost you can see here 225 children, that is 50% of these 450 children, and remaining were divided into between two comparative vaccine, 100 children in Prevnar 13 arm and 100 children in the Synflorix arm. So 2:1:1 ratio was the distribution, and the endpoints were again immune response, safety. Mind you, there was no booster. This was 3+0, 6, 10, and 14 weeks primary dosing, but two comparative vaccine, Prevnar 13 and Synflorix. So looking at the safety data, first of all, comparing Pneumosil to Prevnar, for any local side effect, there was no difference between the two vaccines. Comparing Pneumosil with Synflorix, for the local side effect, there was less severe pain or tenderness in Pneumosil group compared to Synflorix. So in the Gambian phase 3, there was less induration and swelling, and in Indian study, there was less tenderness. So there seems to be local tenderness and swelling less with Pneumosil compared to Synflorix, whereas compared to Prevnar 13, there was no difference. On the systemic side effect, whether it is fever, irritability, drowsiness, etc., there was no difference either between Pneumosil and Prevnar or Pneumosil and Synflorix, as there was no significant difference in the side effect profile. So on safety data, all the vaccines were safe. There were hardly any serious side effects. There were no grade 3 side effect. And between Pneumosil and Prevnar, there was no difference on local or systemic side effect. Whereas between Pneumosil and Synflorix, the local tenderness was definitely statistically significantly lesser. For other side effect profile, they were same. And there were no serious adverse effects seen with any of these three vaccines in this Indian study. Now coming to the data on immune response. And as it's only a post-primary, there is no post-booster. I repeat and I remind you again. First few slides will be comparing with Prevnar 13, and the next few slides will be comparing against Synflorix. And the first slide will compare the IgG response and OPA seroconversion, and the next slide will compare the IgG titer ratio and the OPA titer ratio. So this is comparing against Prevnar 13. You can see, first of all, for type 1, 5, and 14, which are the important serotype for developing country invasive pneumococcal disease, both the vaccine had nearly 100% seroconversion. Now, for two serotype, Prevnar 13 was better on IgG response compared to Pneumosil, but that those two serotype, when you compare the OPA response seroconversion, the difference disappears. So on OPA response on seroconversion, there was no difference between the two vaccines, and in fact, for some serotype, the difference was numerically better for Pneumosil, but of course statistically not significant. So you can say these both the vaccines were comparable. Now coming to the titer ratios, for IgG ratios, 6 out of the 10 serotypes were better with Prevnar compared to Pneumosil, but this is on IgG response. When you compare their OPA, then you can see for all the 6 serotypes, the difference disappeared. And in fact, for most of the serotype, the ratio became more than 1. That means numerically better in Pneumosil group compared to Prevnar 13. And in fact, one of the serotype, type 14, was statistically significantly better with Pneumosil compared to Prevnar. So post-primary comparing to Prevnar, there was no serotype which was inferior to Prevnar, and in fact, one serotype was superior to Prevnar as far as OPA titers are concerned. Now comparing to the Synflorix. Now again, numerically on IgG seroconversion, 4 serotypes were better with Pneumosil compared to Synflorix, and on comparing the OPA seroconversion, 6B was better with Synflorix, whereas 19A was better with Pneumosil. Now, when you compare the titer ratios, then you can see here 19F was better with Synflorix, whereas 6 serotype were better with Pneumosil compared to Synflorix. And on OPA, which is more important, the ratio you can see more than one numerically better for at least 8 serotype, out of which 2 serotype were statistically significantly better. And the 19F, which was not doing, which was better with Synflorix on IgG response, on OPA response, you can see the ratio was 1, so it was, the difference disappeared. So on OPA response, you can see for most of the serotype, numerically better with Pneumosil, and for 2 serotype, statistically significantly better with Pneumosil, and none of the serotype better with Synflorix. So the Indian 3+0 conclusion was that there was robust response seen both on IgG and OPA for all the 10 serotype for the new vaccine. And for comparing with Prevnar, there was no serotype which was on OPA titers ratio better with Prevnar. They were similar between the two. And in fact, one of these serotype were better with Pneumosil. And compared to Synflorix, uh, for many serotype on IgG response as well as on OPA, the Pneumosil had a better sero response as compared to Synflorix. Now coming to the last data, and that is the phase 2 Indian toddler data. What if a child comes without any PCV in the second year, and now the parents say that we want to give PCV? So 100 children taken, 50 almost received, 156 children screened, and 114 randomized. So nearly 50% received Prevnar 13, and 50% received uh, Pneumosil, 2 doses, 8 weeks apart. This is the safety profile post dose 1, post dose 2, or combined. You can see there was no difference on any of these side effects between Pneumosil and Prevnar, as happened in the Indian study 2 for infants. Coming to the immune response, this is looking at the IgG response seroconversion. You can see here for 1 seroid or 9V, it was better with Prevnar, but that also difference disappears when you compare the OPA response. So on OPA response, there was not a single serotype which was better with Prevnar. All the serotype had a statistically similar response. So on OPA response, these two vaccines did almost the same for the naive toddlers. Coming to the ratios, for the GMC ratio, you can see 5 serotype were better with Prevnar compared to Pneumosil, but when you compare their OPA ratios, then you can see for except one 6A, which still remains better with Prevnar 13. For all other serotypes, you can see the differences disappeared, and in fact, for one of them, it has become numerically better. So at least 4 serotypes had numerically better response with Pneumosil, and none of the serotype except 6A was better with Prevnar. So on ratios or OPA, it looked very similar between the two vaccines. So this vaccine covers globally almost 71.7% of the serotype, whether you look at Asia, Africa, Latin America, etc. And in India, it'll be almost 73%. So how does it compare with the existing vaccine? So we have four data set on invasive pneumococcal disease serotype distribution, ACIP basis, a good review of last 10 years, and a PDOF data. So except for PDOF data, where the difference between the 6A and 19A containing vaccine, namely Prevnar 13 and Pneumosil, and that of one without 6A 19, that is Synflorix, was not much. For all the other three serotype, you can see 72, 71 with Prevnar and Pneumosil, and 63 with Synflorix, 8% difference. Same way here, almost 7% difference, and here almost 5% difference. So 6A 19A containing vaccine seem to be covering more than 70% coverage, whereas one without 6A 19A seems to be covering less than 70% coverage. And in fact, WHO has recently, Indian government has recently said that any new PCV now will have to cover more than 70% serotype prevalent in India based on the data available. So this is the new data looking in Haryana, healthy infants in the community and children with pneumonia, and looking at the nasopharynx serotype coverage. So you can see for the healthy children, 6A, 19A containing vaccine, namely Prevnar and Pneumosil, 28 and 27% very similar, and little less for Synflorix, 25. But when it comes to children with pneumonia, you can see it's almost same, 32 and 31 with Prevnar and Pneumosil, and see the 8% difference remains here, 24% for Synflorix. And there are some new vaccines which are going to come in the pipeline. So you have 14-valent vaccine from biological Evans, which is same as uh, Prevnar 13, but minus type 3 and plus 2 and 9N. MSD is pursuing a 15-valent vaccine, which is same as Prevnar 13 plus 22F and 33F. And Pfizer is pursuing a 20-valent conjugate pneumococcal vaccine, which is same as Prevnar 13 plus 7 additional serotype as shown here. Now, how will this new vaccine compare with the existing vaccine for the serotype coverage in children? So I showed you Prevnar 13 is around 75%, Pneumocil is around 74%, both are very similar. Synflorix is 7-8% less at 67%. When the biological Evans 14-valent or MSD 50-valent will come, it will be around 78%, so 3 to 4% more serotype coverage than the existing 6A and 19A containing vaccine. And when Prevnar 20 comes, it will be 81%. So these three vaccines, when they come, there will be again some more talk, some more data, some more confusion, some more solutions. And by then, of course, these two vaccines, both GSK and Serum, are also going to increase their valency in the vaccine and increase their brand. So I know GSK is working on a 6A 19A containing vaccine. The Serum is trying to work for expanded program in older children and adults, and also in immune compromised hosts, and to make a more valent vaccine to have competition with this new vaccine. So lastly, WHO position paper very clearly says that if your country has 19A and 6C, then you need 6A to cross-protect 6C and 19A, of course, for its own direct effect. So you should have vaccine for 6A and 19A containing vaccine. And for type 3, it says that any vaccine which has type 3, namely Prevnar, in 7 countries has shown limited or no effectiveness. So type 3 being not there in the new vaccine is not a problem as far as the efficacy of this vaccine is concerned. And mind you, there are only 2 vaccines which have 6A and 19A, which WHO also says to use a 6A 19 containing vaccine, and that is namely Prevnar 13, which we have all been using for last several years, and now this new vaccine Pneumosil from Serum Institute of India. And the last slide on this testimonial on this new vaccine is from none other than Dr. Cynthia Whitney. For those of you who don't know, she was working at the US CDC when Prevnar and Prevnar 13 were being launched. And that's how she has more than 200 scientific papers on pneumococcal disease itself. Now she's retired from US CDC and is a member of the faculty at Emory University. And this is what she says on Pneumosil, that across the studies, the new vaccine meets all the immune response data and safety data following primary and booster response. And its data on safety and immune response is very similar to the licensed PCV, namely Prevnar 13 and Synflorix. It has achieved lot-to-lot consistency, it did not interfere with the concomitant administered other infant vaccine in the primary series and booster series. And looking at all this data overall, if this new vaccine is included in the national program, it will have a similar impact as the existing vaccines have shown in several countries where these vaccines are used in the national program. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for your patient hearing, and I will now stop sharing my screen, and maybe we will take the question answer. So 1 minute, let me go back. Yes. Oh, what happened? Why am I not? Here it is. Yes, just 1 minute. 1 minute. Stop share, and there we are. So, where's Abhay Bhai? Dr. Abhay, are you there? Yeah, okay, welcome. So I will request both Dr. Sham and Dr. Abhay Kukraja to make their opening remarks on this new vaccine and the data that we will take some question. First, some question from my point of view, and then we'll take question if they are there in the chat box. So first, Dr. Sham Kukraja and then Dr. Abhay Shah.
Uh, 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 Dr. Nitin, very nice presentation, and you covered the subject in great detail. And I'm impressed with the immunogenicity data. It's fantastic. I think this vaccine is comparable to PCV13. And as far as PCV10 of GSK is concerned, this vaccine appears to be shade better. So I feel this is a very good vaccine and more of a custom-made vaccine for our environment. And quite impressive data. And I think we Indians should be very proud of this vaccine.
Okay, Abhay Bhai, your remarks.
Yeah, so again, very as usual, excellent presentation, sir. Of course, pneumococcal disease is one of the major killer as far as under 5 mortality is concerned. And if you look at the seroprevalence, probably this is the vaccine which is customized for the use of the India and other Asian countries, especially the serotype 1, 5, 6, 19A. And if you look at the immunogenicity data, especially the functional OPA titer, almost in 7 to 8 serotypes, they are non-inferior to PCV13, and they are at times even superior than available PCV10. So I think if you look at the cost effectiveness, anyone who were going for the PCV10 because of just cost factor and not using the PCV13, it is a very good option that we have got the 6A, 19A almost with the half of the price.
Okay, so I will take some questions which have come in the chat box first, then we can also discuss some other nuances. So one question, maybe Sham, you can take. After splenectomy, which vaccine would you give? And what is the schedule? I think it's not related to the current vaccine, but nonetheless, I think we will take
See,
this
in
question.
splenectomy, if I am planning elective splenectomy,
Yes.
I'll try to give the vaccine 2 weeks prior. And mainly I'm trying to give meningococcal, pneumococcal, and H influenzae, and maybe typhoid also, because it's also capsulated. So you may give these vaccines 2 weeks prior. But if the patient has gone through emergency splenectomy, you may give these vaccines anytime after the patient recovers from this.
And how many doses and what schedule? Like you use
I,
only
I'll
PCV13 or also
this
use
patient,
23-valent vaccine?
this patient is going to become immunocompromised.
Correct.
So once it becomes immunocompromised, then in that situation, I'll be definitely giving PCV first. And we have been giving PCV13 followed by PCV polysaccharide vaccine 23.
So you keep
After a period of 8 weeks.
8 weeks, correct. And in adults, you keep a gap of 1 year if possible.
Yes, I think in those situations, maybe after the age of 50 years, the gap can be kept after maybe 1 year.
Okay.
But I think immunocompromised, I'm keen to give it after 8 to 12
8
weeks.
weeks. Absolutely. Completely agree with that. And you may not have time for 1 year, many
Yes,
times, even if it's a planned splenectomy. So you can give, and in children, of course, 8 weeks is a good enough. And you should never reverse the schedule of giving 27 vaccine first and then the conjugate vaccine, because then the response to the conjugate vaccine is blunted. Okay, Abhay Bhai, there's one question. They want, Abhay Bhai, you want to know that whether these PCVs are going to help against COVID.
Never ever. Of course, we need to be updated with any vaccine. so that we not have any comorbid situation of COVID pandemic. But
Correct.
it has nothing relation. It is not increase, not potentiate, not protect.
Correct. So you would want to prevent other vaccine
Correct,
preventable respiratory illnesses like using influenza vaccine and pneumococcal vaccine, but that's not for the direct benefit against COVID per se.
Because I
Okay.
think the question came because they thought that after influenza, pneumococcus
Yeah.
is quite common and pneumococcus should be prevented. So in that situation, yes. As
Yes.
far as influenza complications are concerned, pneumococcal vaccine is a good idea.
But unfortunately for COVID, we know most of the people who have ARDS, it's because of either there are three mechanisms. One is a direct COVID virus. Second is an immunological response enhanced disease. Third is a microthrombi, all and a cytokine storm. So all put together. So there is no evidence that antibiotics have really helped to prevent this ARDS or secondary complication, except in very few. So unlike in influenza, where most of those who develop severe pneumonia is because of secondary bacterial infection, that's not true for COVID. But nonetheless, you should use.
But you should update it.
Vaccine. Absolutely, I completely. There's one question that do you think that the clinical presentation symptoms and signs in pneumococcal pneumonia are atypical compared to in the past 30 years back? Do we see massive lobar pneumonia nowadays? So maybe Sham. Yes.
Yes, you see lobar pneumonia, and
In fact,
you may have a presentation which is very classical, that is a lobar consolidation. You may have a manifestation which can be a little, sometimes bilateral pneumonia, sometimes necrotizing pneumonia, and sometimes a mild pneumonia.
Yeah.
All spectrum is there.
Yeah, in fact,
atypical pneumonia has gone to rise. So we are become more and more aware and sensitive atypical pneumonia. But at the same time, I agree with Dr. Kukreja.
Yeah,
we have a classical pneumonia still.
Maybe, however, is it because we are now using Hib and a pneumococcal to a large extent? You prevent a lot of these pneumonias, and you have
absolutely. We have got number of vaccine preventative diseases like Hib.
And I don't know whether it's your experience for both of you, but we are seeing that in the last 5 to 10 years, in fact, children with parapneumonia and empyema is increasing.
Yes.
They are increasing, and they usually do not follow stage 1, stage 3. Directly they come to serofibrinosis level.
That's right. Now, I inform my patients about new PCV 10 vaccine, that is Pneumosil, with equal efficacy at half the price of Prevnar, but they were not ready for it as it is newly launched, and they opted for already established vaccine, though it's double the cost. How do you manage? I think important practical question. Let me put it the other way, that now we were always wanting to give a 6A, 19A containing vaccine, and Prevnar 13 was so expensive that there were several children who could not afford it, so we were giving them Synflorix, which is also a good vaccine. Now that we have a 6A, 19A containing vaccine, which is cheaper, much cheaper than Prevnar, and maybe even cheaper than Synflorix, should you offer that vaccine as the first? That's point number one. And point two, if suppose the parents say, but last time you give Prevnar to my first child, what would you do in that situation? So both this situation, Dr. Sham.
See, the basic difference between the two is only one. And that is you have a huge data behind PCV13. This is a new vaccine. Immunologically, it appears as good.
Correct.
But we do not have a real world data. So in that situation, the skepticism of some doctors or some patient is not unfounded.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong in giving the existing vaccine if they want it.
And if they have a more trust in this, I follow a cafeteria approach.
Absolutely.
I inform the patient. These are the vaccines available, and you may choose the vaccine. And if he says, I'm a poor person, I can't choose it, I'll say, this is the absolutely recommended vaccine from my side. Go ahead and take it.
Abeba, you have any further thoughts?
No, the same. But if patient wants to go for PCV13, it's all right. Otherwise,
so let me say this way: that if suppose now tomorrow onwards, when a new patient comes and he was affording or semi-affording, I used to offer them say Prevnar 13. Today I offer them Pneumosil and said that this comes at half the rate. Most of the time they don't mind, provided because they have faith in us. So I think it's time for us then, because in COVID time, economic situation of even good families is little in tight and little trouble. So if you can save some money for the family, maybe they'll take some other vaccine, which will be more helpful. At the same time, not insisting that no, you should only take this vaccine or that vaccine.
If cost is an issue, no issues here. You can go ahead and give it.
Okay, can it be used in PCV naive adolescent and adults, this new vaccine?
This new vaccine is the trial done only up to 2 years. Probably it's an off-label.
So after 2 years, you should not use because we don't have data, right? If yes, what dose? Suppose you want to use how many doses will you give?
No,
Suppose 2 to 5 year old child comes, they say, no, I want to take this vaccine, I can only afford. Will you give it off label, but how many doses?
2 doses 8 weeks apart.
8 weeks apart.
Yeah.
Sham, you have any further
I think
thoughts?
2 doses. I think
Yeah, I think I would not use this vaccine in adults because I'm sure in adults there are some data in phase 1. I mean, in fact, in the other CME, there's someone asked, but you showed data in adults both in phase 1 and the phase 1 to Gambian study. Why are you saying don't use in adults? I told him that the licensing is based on phase 3, not based on phase 1 and phase 2. So that's the reason why probably it will be a completely off-label use. Okay, can it be used in PC? That what about interchangeability? Yeah, that's an important question. Someone who has taken Prevna, now the parents feel that this is cheaper and equally good. Why should I spend my money?
I
What do
think
you do?
ideally there should not be an interchangeability. The complete
Correct.
series should be with the same brand.
But
But
suppose
of
if
course,
they
but yes,
insist,
if they insist that it is a 6A, 19A, I think there is no harm in using because we have got the booster data. We have also available that it has been
correct.
a comparator. It has compared with both PCV30 and PCV10. So I think there should not be much risk. Of course, the ideal should have the same vaccine. But if
Sham?
someone insists for it, we can switch over to it.
Yeah,
the antigen is same.
yes.
Absolutely. And
No,
it
but
is
is it
-3, 4,
yeah.
and 18C.
So
I'm
is it
not so
fair?
much bothered about these 3 serotypes.
Yeah.
In
So
that
Sham,
situation, I'll
Sham, fair
say
to say that you switch from a lower to higher, no problem, but higher to lower valency, I think you should not do.
I think ideally no.
Yeah.
Ideally no. But the reason is I think if they have run out of money now because of lockdown, it is okay. But I
No,
never interchange in my practice any vaccine.
no, what I
Any
mean
vaccine.
is that you can
As a principle.
interchange between Prevnar and Pneumosil because both have 6A, 19A. But
Mm.
to change back to Synflorix, it doesn't have 6A, 19A may not make too much scientific sense.
Because here the antigen is same and the
Yeah,
conjugating agent is also same.
yeah. Why is it given so late in the study and not at 2, 4, and 6 months with booster at 2 years? So someone wants to know, should you switch to 2 for 6, 18 months? 2 years is too late for a booster, I would say. 2 for 6, is it, I think, is India ripe enough to switch to 2 for
No,
6
no.
away?
Our seroepidemiology does not allow us to give this too late because most of the children, the pneumococcal are below the age of 1 year and they're more fatal below 6 months. So early
So
protection is better.
yeah, and also that other vaccines have to be synced along with this vaccine. And you have pertussis which can come very early in life. You may have diphtheria, tetanus coming early in the life. In fact, 10% of the neonatal mortality is because of pneumonia, and a lot of them may be because of pneumococcal. So looking at all that, I think it's too early for us to switch to
I was
6, 10,
going
14.
through a data in South Africa with the
Yes,
Madi studies there.
yes.
They have seen that up to 15% of pneumococcal diseases before the age of 14 weeks.
Hmm.
So it's a huge chunk, 15%.
Hmm.
So you should not be delaying to, I think, 2, 4, 6.
Correct.
Complete by 14 weeks. Complete
Correct.
everything by 14 weeks.
Okay, someone wants to know, would you continue penicillin prophylaxis when you are given this vaccine in patient with either functional or anatomical asplenia?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, sir.
Why?
Yes,
Why?
sir.
Why? Why? I
See,
think
you won't be covering everything, every pneumonia.
exactly. All serotypes are not covered, and post-spilectomy fulminant sepsis can happen with non-vaccine
And
serotypes.
happens in ours. Happens in ours.
Yeah.
Very sir.
Do you recommend for using immunization above 60? We discussed that. Would you add PCV23 for those with asplenia? We discussed that. In sickle cell also, yes. All so maybe quickly, Abhay, role of PCV23. I mean
think
PPSV23. You can
PPS
summarize.
number one, it is to be used only after 2 years because it's a PCR independent vaccine. Number two, first you have to give conjugate vaccine, and if the person is immunocompetent 8 weeks after second dose.
Correct.
If the immunocompetent above the age of 65 years, the gap should be PCV, and this PPV is 1 year.
Correct.
1 year.
And number of
after
doses.
64 years, and if the child has completed PCV, only 1 dose 65 is required. If it's not, then 2 doses of PPV is required.
Correct. So all immunocompromised hosts should take 2 PPSV23 5 years apart, and above 65, that being an age which is immunosenescent, again you take 2 doses at 65 and 70 years of age. And of course, always conjugate first, and conjugate is single dose, right?
Single dose,
at any age, Okay, many doctors, if patient is vaccinated with Synflorix or Prevnar, can we shift to Pneumosil? We discussed that yes, you can do it, no problem. Many doctors are asking the question, even the less than 1% prevalence from ST18C. So probably they want to know 18C type 4 and type 3, they are so less. if my patient gets infected with pneumonia with this serotype, what should I do?
There are 80,
theoretical.
no, sir. There are 80 serotypes. So and the vaccine is only for the 13. So it is
Correct,
going to be the theoretical risk.
correct. We
Human
have
serotypes.
an answer for this type 3 not associated with MDR multi-drug resistance, but still, what can tell better answer for this question? So I think that's a very long question. So let's discuss, why does the type 3 not work, Sham, for PCV? And yet MSD and PCV20 from Pfizer, they continue to have type 3 in the vaccine.
That reason, the second part I won't know. That may be the technical part of it.
The first
I
part,
am able to get rid of it, but it doesn't work. That is proven. And initial data was indicating that it works, but ultimately we came to know it is
so
not.
why doesn't it work? Why?
The capsule is very thick, N capsule, thick capsule. So they are not, they do not assist with opsonal phagocytosis. These are even resistant opsonal phagocytosis.
Okay, someone wants to know if someone has taken all the doses of sulfuric. Now that Pneumosil seems to be better than sulfuric, should I give an extra dose of Pneumosil? I think that's
Extra, no,
too
but
much.
if they come
Not
for
required.
booster, we can give a booster.
Yeah, so you can switch to a booster.
Not the 4th dose.
Okay. Why was type 4 and 18C dropped?
It covers less than 0.8 to 2% of the.
So I think I must tell you here that more the serotype you add to a existing pneumococcal conjugate vaccine, lesser is the immune response per serotype. So suppose PCV7 became PCV13, for the 7 common serotype, the titers will be lower for PCV13 compared to PCV7. Now when PCV13 becomes PCV20, for the 13 common serotype, the titers will be lower with PCV20 than with PCV13. And if you compare PCV20 with PCV7, the titers will be almost half for the 7 common serotype. So if you can drop some serotype which are not important or prevalent or relevant, then that's good, because the vaccine will become more immunogenic. Okay, for a child more than 2 years having received incomplete Pneumosil vaccination schedule, can we give, suppose you have started with Pneumosil, someone is saying theoretically, and child didn't take complete vaccination, now is more than 2 years, and you say you can't Pneumosil, what do? Can you give him Synflorix or Prevnar to complete the schedule?
I think you can give off-label this.
Off-label Pneumosil. So you can give up to 5 years. I will give off-label in such a situation. All right. Why is it not given free to everyone? Buy less arms. Buy less. I think this is a very socialistic question, but I must tell you that who says this vaccine is not given free? PCV is part of the national program in India in several states and is being ranked up. So like we added HIB, we have added Rota, we have added pneumococcal. So I think the person who has asked this question, Dr. Raj Warrior is asking this question. My God, Raj, where are you? You are in USA. I'm so happy that you are attending this session on vaccine. So we both practice hemato-oncology. My passion is in vaccine. I never knew Dr. Raj Warrior has a passion in the vaccine. In any case, Dr. Raj Warrior, so this vaccine is part of the national program now through Gavi funding so far, and I'm sure now with Pneumosil being launched from Serum at throwaway price, it will become actually without Gavi funding, direct funding by the government. All right. Every kid in Rwanda, sorry?
It's going to save a lot of money.
Yeah. Every kid in Rwanda gets it, but not in India. So we said that, no, it's not correct. Every kid will now get it also in India. It's a matter of few years. Has the percentage of pneumococcal pneumonia changed out of all cause of pneumonia? So what is the impact of this PCV on all cause pneumonia is probably they want to know. Yeah, Abhay bhai.
Yeah, it is definitely. It causes a decrease in the vaccine serotype, non-vaccine serotype as well, and other non-cause serotype has also other non-cause pneumonia has also decreased.
So all cause community-acquired pneumonia impact of all the PCVs has been great. Anywhere from 25 to up to even 50% decrease in all cause pneumonia hospitalization in children below the age of 5 years. And in fact, one of the countries, there was also a herd effect seen whereby giving PCV to children below the age of 5 years, the overall all cause pneumonia decreased in children up to 15 years of age. So that has been the strong effect of PCVs on pneumonia. Is there any increase in pneumococcal infection by non-vaccine serotype?
It is common phenomena when there is a.
So Sham,
it has not been a major issue.
Yes.
The non-vaccine serotypes are not so virulent as the vaccine types. So that way it's a matter of concern
Yeah.
But after 19A, we are not too much worried, to be honest.
So to me, 19A was the only so-called serotype replacement, but it was actually not a replacement. It was an increase in 19A disease in several countries, even who did not have pneumococcal conjugate vaccine, like say Korea, like say Israel. So 19A was becoming more virulent in children, and that's how it went out of hand. And none of the other serotype in last 20 years of use of PCV has actually had a meaningful serotype replacement. So that's
But
very
there has been an
reassuring.
increase in 22F and 33F, especially in adult. So
Yeah.
I think this spectrum goes on expanding.
Yes, so we will always make better vaccines whenever it comes to. Okay, I think important question that throws some light on this 3+0 and 3+1 schedule. You have license, I mean, you have label of 3+0 in Indian, and IAP, ACVIP says 3+1. What is the reason, Sham?
See, if you take it as 3+0, which is a recommended WHO schedule, the second schedule by WHO is 2+1. Okay. Now, why we are very keen to give it 3+1? First of all, that is an important question. Why we want to give 3+1? Now, there's a data which is emerging in last several years, and that is between the age of 1 to 4 years, children must be covered. Why it must be covered? Because the nasopharyngeal carriage transmission is most from this age group, from 1 to 4 years. So if you really want to have a real benefit of the pneumococcal vaccine in the community, as it has happened in the world, you were telling in your opening statement that the indirect benefits are huge. The hard effect is huge. That can only come if you give a booster dose, so proven now, and the booster dose in the second year. So in that situation, I think you must give 3+1.
So I think that
If
is
you really want to have a benefit out of this is 3+1.
So you should use 3+1 or 2+1 schedule,
now
depending upon
data from 3+1 is there from Gambia.
Absolutely.
We have got a toddler study also.
Correct.
In India.
Right.
And also 3+0 has already been done. And the ongoing 2+1 going on in India also. Ongoing study you told us. So in that situation, I'm quite comfortable giving with the additional dose because I want to cover that part which I was discussing.
Correct.
In many conditions, like hepatitis B, you are giving at
extra doses.
Extra dose. So many situations you are giving extra dose. There is no problem.
Abhay, I wanted to say something.
Yes, I was referring to the toddler study as well as the Gambia study, and there is one.
So I think
second, sir, one serotype 1, the incidence is more after 1 year. So some certain serotypes will be better covered if you give the booster dose.
Correct.
And in a primary series, sometimes the seroconversion may be not that good, but the same booster is given, then the immune response is more robust. So there are multiple advantages of this.
Correct. So that's the reason of using. So why do you use 3+0, 2+1? Is to save on one dose. And UK was the first to start this 2+1 schedule and proved that you can actually do it with an extra dose and save a lot of money. So a lot of countries then after that have started following. To me, the best schedule to use if you want to use 3 doses, 2+1 rather than 3+0, where you give 2 primary at 6 and 14 and an early booster at 9 months. This was very exemplified in the South African study by Professor Madhi's group. And I think that is the one which is going to cover up for a lot of serotype in the first year and then boost at 9 months to cover up for the second year. And you know, your pneumococcal problems are maximum in the first 2 years. So I think 2+1 schedule, that is the reason why Government of India has very rightly taken to 2+1 schedule. But in our day-to-day practice, that's for the EPI. For our day-to-day practice, we must continue to use.
And in PI also there is 3+0, but ACVIP recommends 3+1.
+1, that we said. Okay. Can Pneumosil approved for the booster dose at 12 to 5 by DCGI? So it is not approved or not approved. The label is for 3+0, but as there is a toddler study, you can use this vaccine as 2 doses 8 weeks apart, as I showed you, in naive children who come in the second year of life. All right, then there are several questions. Can Pneumosil be used against otitis media?
Obviously, I think it can be used against otitis.
So it's not it can be used, it will have an effect on otitis media as well. Yes. What about herd immunity? We haven't shown any herd immunity because this vaccine is not in use in any country so far. But I'm sure, as I said, the carriage study impact will be there. So if there is decrease in the carriage, you for sure know that you are going to also have a lot of herd effect for those.
So far we do not have a carriage data.
No, so the impact data that is planned, this study in India, Vietnam, and Indonesia will give the answer. Okay, I vaccinated my kids with Synflorix. I was told it's best in India. If is it not sufficient? Do I need to take my kids? So we have said that there's no need to give any extra dose. You have used any PCV, that's good, but henceforth you can use a vaccine containing 6A 19A. They'll have more meaningful data. Okay, from Philippines, why should why should it not be given to every kid in India? Are we so poor? So we already said, I think there's some Indian in Philippines who is feeling fervent about the Indian. So let me assure all my colleagues from India and outside that Indian government has included PCV since last 2 years in the national program and is being scaled up from the country with the maximum child mortality to now the countries with lesser child mortality. And ultimately in the next few years, it will become a vaccine available to all the people all over the country.
And after this Pneumosil, it will become very soon.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Raj Warrior, again, if a child has been vaccinated with 3 doses of Pneumosil as per Schedule 16, 14, and in future comes after 2 years, we said we will give 1 dose, though it may be off-label. Okay, curiously, Indian trial on Pneumosil has been done on 3+0 versus 3+1. We have discussed all that. Most of the countries using Synflorix, like more than 45 countries using routine immunization program. In that recently introduced in Kenya has reduced 27% of IPD cases. What is the prevalence of 6A 19A? So what is the prevalence of 6A 19A that we are harping so much on 6A 19A containing vaccine is what this doctor wants to know. Abhay?
Yeah, so if you consider 19, probably as per India is concerned, is nearly 8 to 10%.
Correct.
And for 6 and nearly it is 5 to 7%.
Correct. So both together, the difference of around 8 to 10% will remain between 6A 19A containing vaccine and one which does not have. All right, government is giving total 3 doses, 2 in primary, 1 in booster. What's your opinion? We say that in EPI they may use it, but in our day-to-day practice we must not use 2+1 schedule, and we must continue to use 3+1 schedule. Okay. Can this EPI schedule be used for non-affording patient? I think it's a genuine question. Sham, what will you do? Really poor patient. He says, no, I can't afford 4 doses. You are saying a new vaccine which is very good has come at X cost. What will you do?
No harm. Absolutely no harm. Absolutely.
But that should not become a practice.
But it should not be a routine. Once in a while, for exceptional cases, all right.
Yes, a patient says, I'm really poor and I really want to take this vaccine. In that situation, I think you can reduce.
So I have a different take on that. I'll say, okay, you can afford 3 vaccines. I will not take any charge at all. All right. I'll give you at cost and I'll give you 4 doses.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think we should do that. Once in a while, help a poor patient in giving vaccines almost free or almost at a cost. All right. The next question. A lot of people delay starting the doses till 6 months because they think now they can give 2+1 in any case. That's dangerous. Abhay, what's your take?
No, should not.
So why not? Why not?
Because see, that already Dr. Sham has told, as early as 14 weeks, the disease is 15%. So majority of crunch of patient who have the IPD, severe pneumonia, they belong to below 6 months. So I would not raise the patient for first 6 months for the cost of just 2,000, 3,000 rupees.
Correct.
Nitin, by that argument, give it after 1 year.
Okay, I think I have finished all the questions that were there in the chat box. How much more time we have?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. So I think any closing remarks from both of you? I have spoken enough.
Yes.
First Abhay, then Sham.
Yeah, so this is, I think, this new PCV10 is going to be a game changer as per the reduction in the mortality and morbidity related to pneumococcal disease is concerned, number one. Second, there were previously 2 options, PCV13 and PCV10. But because of the cost factor, we are often opted to PCV10. But now we have got the 6A and 19A. So we have got, I would say, Indianized Prevenar at a half cost. And so it contains almost all the relevant serotype which is prevalent in our country. I think it's a good tool to prevent this pneumococcal disease.
Sham?
But give any PCV, whatever coming to you.
But give some PCV. Okay, great.
I think that's a very important thing that must give PCV. And I think the people who are listening to us also make it a point that in this debate, the patient should not say, I'll come next time and let you know. I think PCV must be given and it should not be a missed opportunity.
Correct.
Okay, I think my comments will be, number one, it is a custom-made vaccine. It's going to be very useful in our public health. India is going to save a lot of money and many countries are going to save a lot of money. It's going to be very cheap in the public health because it's Indian-made vaccine. It is going to be as effective as PCV13 as far as immunological data is concerned. And my gut feeling is, this is a vaccine, I think when I heard about it, to be honest, I had no questions. I felt this is a vaccine which is going to be a game changer.
Correct. Good. So we will sign off by just answering the last question. Shelf life, I think, is 2 years, and temperature is 2 to 8 degree. Is there any interaction with Manetra or any meningococcal vaccine? The answer is no. Can you use it for 2 to 5 years? We said already, off label, 2 doses in a naive patient. If they have already completed schedule, there is no need to give an extra dose. So I think with that, we have been first of all able to really appreciate the crowd. They've asked so many questions, almost 25-30 questions, and also that we could have half an hour where we could take all the questions. So till end, I have taken almost all the questions. So really thankful to both Abhay and Dr. Shyam for sparing their time and giving their wonderful expert opinion and answering the questions in rapid fire manner so that we could take all the questions. I would like to thank the IAP for giving this platform on DIAP for to share some of our thoughts on this new PCV. I wish all the viewers a very happy new year, and I wish all the viewers that please do take your COVID vaccines as and when possible. Do not believe in any mischief mongers, any WhatsApp university, or any worry about side effect. Protect yourself and your families. Stay safe and do continue to use your mask for at least another 6 months till the time the pandemic is declared as over. With that, I will hand over mic back to the IAP and thank you everyone.